Hi, my name is Jamie Lyon. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy here at Lucid, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about hybrid work and some of the real life experimentation we have been doing at Lucid accordingly. So, let me first tell you a little bit about Lucid. Our Lucid Visual Collaboration Suite helps teams see and build the future. And with Lucid Spark, our digital whiteboarding product, we help teams bring out their best ideas with free-form ideation and group brainstorming. So whether remote, hybrid, or in person, it offers a really creative, kind of unstructured, fun space for teams to work together. And with Lucid Chart, our intelligent diagramming product, we help teams actually, turn these ideas into reality. So whether managing an organization or deploying a new product, Lucid Chart helps teams stay aligned and on the same page as they're dealing with complexity. So at Lucid, we like to think of ourselves as experts in experimentation. We do it all the time for our product to make sure that we're delivering the best customer value that we can. And earlier this summer, as parts of the world seemed that they would open, we realized we needed to start experimenting. We needed to feel what hybrid work, this new normal, was going to feel like. And we wanted to make sure that we understood and could empathize with the pain that our customers were going to experience pretty shortly. So we set up an experiment in order to feel those challenges firsthand and to understand also how our product specifically could enhance and address hybrid work. Spoiler alert, it was quite painful. So we're gonna talk about some of the learnings that we had there today. Overall, when you think about the kind of pains of this hybrid work, they seem to fall in three main categories. So first was communication. With half the room on video and half the room in person, it was really there wasn't a shared platform for communication. It almost felt like two separate meetings. So some folks would be chatting in the Zoom chat, others were chatting kind of to each other in person in the room, and it was really disjointed. The second category was connection. Just the kind of human connection side and the disparity between the connection that people were having in person versus the people remote led to people feeling kind of left out, which is obviously not great for the productivity of the meeting and also just general culture and kind of morale. And then the third bucket was collaboration. Collaboration was really hard. We couldn't all access the same information, right? So some of the items were posted in the Zoom chat and you couldn't access that. Some folks were writing on the whiteboard. So the actual kind of space to collaborate was challenging to find. So I'm gonna go in a little bit more detail and actually walk you through a specific example of a meeting. I hope this isn't too painful, but again, I think it's helpful for all of us to understand kind of the dynamics and challenges that we have. So we were doing a strategy session to basically make some feature changes that we had in our platform. And this was I was in this meeting actually personally, so I can speak to it, but it was a pretty mission critical project. And so we had 6 people in person, 3 remote. We had a super tight deadline, and we had cleared off a full afternoon kind of as a half day working session to really make progress on this question. A desire to really answer some key questions and get the right folks in the room. So how did that go? Well, initially, everyone was involved. We talked about our weekends, our kids and hobbies, kind of this typical small talk that everyone knows from how meetings begin. But as the meeting went on, naturally, the remote people kind of were left out, and conversations in person began to dominate the room. It may seem silly. You probably see the word donuts on this slide, but the in-person people had a spread of donuts. And I vividly remember someone talking about how good the one with pink frosting and sprinkles was, which, again, it's trivial, but the in-person people had this sense of connection over these donuts that the remote folks didn't. And it's kind of a metaphor for this connection, right? The remote folks couldn't smell, they couldn't taste, and they couldn't experience the donuts in the way that we could. Again, may seem silly, but it definitely, when we talked to the remote folks in the room, they played back that it was just, there was a feeling of other when they weren't able to participate in that way. So there's the donuts. Although I guess there's a chocolate sprinkle one, not a pink sprinkle one, but the pink sprinkle one was the one that we all said was great. Anyway, So the other challenging part of the meetings, or this meeting in particular that we experienced, were the portals of communication. So all of the reference documents that we had were shared electronically. We had a Google Doc, we had a Lucidchart diagram, and they were all shared via Zoom chat. And pretty quickly I realized I was sitting in the room, I couldn't actually access the Zoom chat because we were logged into Zoom in the Zoom room that we were in, and I needed to actually get logged in via my computer. But it was that awkward situation of I joined while not being on mute, and there was the terrible ringing. We all know it. It's not a great situation, but it was a great example of the communication was disjointed between the two groups. The other part of it is that our meeting host, he is a very visual thinker, and he naturally went to the whiteboard multiple times during the meeting, which instantly became useless for the people that were joining remotely. They couldn't see it. It was too far away. All of us were engaged there, and it was kind of, they just tuned out because they couldn't understand or absorb it. And it really meant that the communication was compromised for the remote folks in the room. Or not in the room, I guess I should say. After the meeting, we debriefed, and I was pretty taken aback by some of their feedback, especially the folks that were joining remotely. They felt really excluded. And one of them actually showed me this screenshot, which is literally my coworker, Tim, blocking the camera so they cannot see the rest of the room and the rest of the conversation that's happening. And I think it's a perfect illustration. It just, after time, the in-person folks on the call, or I'm sorry, after time, the in-person folks on the call tended to forget the remote folks were there entirely, which was a real problem in this circumstance because we had most of our product marketing folks were dialed in or were remote, and their expertise was mission critical to this initiative, and it wasn't being heard. So it was really hard for them to collaborate and really hard for them to kind of have their voice heard. All right. That meeting was pretty painful. So I hope, hopefully you haven't had too many meetings that felt this acutely hard, but it is a good example of kind of the challenges that exist in hybrid work. But I'll share a happier example with you guys as we have taken some time to actually think about, how our solutions and our just best practices can better support hybrid teams and the challenges that they had. So fast forward. We had a design session with 5 people in person and 3 remote, so similar dynamic to the first meeting that I went through, and we needed to improve user flows in our product. So we kicked things off a little differently. We kicked things off with what we call kind of a virtual coffee or a how do you feel today session in Lucid Spark. And the benefit to this was that even so basically we made sure that even those in person and those remote were in the Lucid Spark board and participated there. So we used icons and GIFs and emojis to basically show, in your box, how you were feeling that day and why. And the connection activity is really inclusive, and it really helped people kind of feel like we were all on the same page as we started the meeting. And then the beauty of it was because we had been all in that same Lucid Spark board, it was really easy for us to transition to the actual kind of agenda and meat of the meeting. So we started with this agenda, and it was all prepared with all of the reference documents that we needed. So we didn't feel the pain of kind of, reference docs shared on Google, on Zoom chat or on Slack. They were all in this document that we had already all been in because we were there for the icebreaker. So it really was kind of an intentional choice to prioritize digital first and that mentality for the overall group. But ultimately, it led to such a better outcome because we were all on the same page, and it took a little extra work from the folks in the room to make sure they were in the Lucid Spark board and that they had their computer open. But ultimately, helped the tone and helped the efficiency of the meeting tremendously just out of the gates in the first little bit. As we went through the meeting, it was pretty remarkable how well the technology facilitated collaboration, especially in contrast to the way in which we had collaborated in the first kind of feature session. We use things like timers to keep everyone on track. So sometimes when folks in the room, started having side conversation, we had a timer in the Lucid Spark board that was keeping the folks at the mission critical task at hand. We used collaborator colors for sticky notes, so it was really easy for folks to add a comment or add a question, and we know exactly who it was from, and we could come back to it, as conversation allowed. So it didn't have kind of some of those awkward interruptions, if you will, and the ability to collaborate non-verbally can be really powerful, especially for folks that may be a little bit hesitant to raise their hand with a question or raise their hand with a comment. And lastly, people could see and comment on others' ideas. So it didn't necessarily need to be something that we addressed in the meeting. Retrospectively, we could go back through the board and we could see where folks commented or emojid if they really felt that this was a compelling point or had questions, etc. So just a kind of an enhanced level of collaboration and communication, candidly, that we didn't have in the first meeting. Reflections after this session were pretty different, a dramatically different tone, honestly, than the first one that I walked you through. And it warmed my heart because it was kind of culture and work related, right? So there was definitely an agreement that there was a lot of great work that was accomplished, but there was also a feeling that there was a deeper sense of connection. The remote folks felt connected to those in the room felt connected to the remote folks kind of equally. And that's important, right? Because we're going to have distributed teams and everyone's hybrid model is going to look differently, but we never want to make people feel left out or feel that they aren't actually contributing towards the important questions that we're trying to tackle together. The other thing that was played back was there was a lot of output and next steps that was automatically captured in the board. We weren't, taking a picture of a whiteboard and someone was having to transcribe the notes, right? Everything was right there. We had assigned next steps and tasks, et cetera, and it was all in the document, which made it really easy to actually jump towards next steps and action accordingly. All right. So happier second meeting for sure. But generally, we're in a pretty remarkable time. So much is changing, which is really exciting. But there are some challenges in that. And I want to kind of to plant the seed of let this inspire you. And let's think about how we can make some pretty great change in our organizations accordingly. So my parting thoughts. Many organizations were already working in a hybrid context before the pandemic, but now, the idea that all of us have been remote for, and not everybody, but many of us have been remote for the past 18 months, hybrid may even look a little different. So take some time and actually think about how habits or behaviors in your organization have changed for better or for worse. And, you have an opportunity to realign them and realign your teams and realign your processes. So do it. The next point is that visual collaboration is really effective if you have the right tools to support it. So, if you use visual collaboration applications like Lucid Visual Collaboration Suite, it can really help teams come together and not only collaborate on synchronous work, but asynchronous work accordingly. So think about those solutions that might elevate your ability to collaborate across locations, time zones, et cetera. And lastly, embrace this new normal. It's crazy times, but this kind of next normal has brought a lot of good things. The opportunity to increase diverse thought and diverse thinking across your organization. So seek out those positive changes where you can and amplify those where possible. All right, that's me for today. Really appreciate the time and good luck out there in the next normal. Thank you.